Hey Dusk, you said you played all these Monster Hunter games before, so which monsters were your favorite? Well, that's a topic for another video. I can tell you, however, that my all-time favorite monster was Alatreon, but not the one from World. They destroyed that one. That one's dead to me. They butchered my all-time favorite monster. I used to like Alatreon from the old games, and in World they changed them around completely. What I am going to talk about though, is all the monsters that I would love to see return. Whether it be in Rise or the next Monster Hunter game, I don't even care. I just want to see these monsters again and fight them again. In fact, I think it's unlikely that we'll see any of these monsters return in Rise. With one exception. One of the monsters in this video might actually return in Rise. All the other ones though, I think there's a higher chance of your dad returning after he said he was going to get milk. Without further ado, here's my top 10 monsters I would love to see again, be it in Rise or the next Monster Hunter game. Quick warning, I'm about to butcher some of these names, so please bear with me. Number 10. Jhen Mohran. You either love or hate this fight, there doesn't really seem to be an in-between. It's still a classic though. I thought the sense of adventure with this one was particularly nice, as it wasn't your static map layout that we normally have. Here you are on a boat in the desert. It could look extra cool with the graphics we have nowadays. I always loved trying to destroy the horns, planting barrel bombs on them. Yeah, this is one of those monsters you could walk on, break his back, you could create holes in his spine too, actually. It also had a phase in the end where you would face the monster head on, or where the monster would face you head on. Perspectives. Number 9. Gammoth. Ah yes, the big popo. Simple yet fun. I like this monster because it's so different. We saw him once in Generations Ultimate and then he just disappeared, never to be seen again. This massive monster was so different from all the others that I really liked fighting him. He stomps all over the place, isn't all that fast, but hits surprisingly hard. Also his hitboxes are big, making up for the lack of speed. I always wondered why Popo never got a big boy version, but they went and did it, and I want to fight him again, as it's simply unique. Imagine trying to run away from an elephant-like monster 10 times your size while you're running out of stamina because you've got ice blight from him throwing snowballs at you all day. Huh, yeah, good times. Number 8. Lagiacrus. Apparently Capcom was planning on this monster's return in Monster Hunter World, but decided not to do it due to problems with the animations, as traversal had a bigger emphasis in that game, and there was no underwater combat. This monster's design will never get old. At this point I don't even care which variant they return, I just want to fight another Lagiacrus. They could just return Ivory Lagiacrus, as we only fought that one on land. The Abyssal Lagiacrus was just like a regular one, but on steroids. A really cool one. But it's extremely unlikely we'll see this guy in Rise. And if underwater combat doesn't return, then the Ivory version is probably the only one we're gonna see happening in the future. Unpredictable Capcom, please bless us. Next time give us a Lagiacrus.
What? Why, you little...
Number 7. Gobul. A very unique design. However, it would be hard to make this monster return as there's no more underwater combat. They could just make this fight similar to how Plesioth functioned though. You couldn't get into the water, but the monsters could, and you could just fish them up. However, Plesioth became an absolute pain fight because of that mechanic, so maybe this isn't all that good of an idea. Still, I really like this monster. He looks funny with his lantern, and he could mimic underwater plants by hiding below the sea sand. Very cool indeed. Number 6. Akantor. This is just an absolute classic. The monster that could really catch you by surprise, especially the first couple times you fought him. See, you thought you were right because you could survive his hits. That's until you realized that this time around you had the defense down blight, and all of a sudden you're dead. This monster was always fun to fight and had nice gear. As ridiculous as it looked, I liked the big and over the top weapons and armor. It always had the highest raw and negative affinity. Number 5. Ukanlos.
I am the Crimson Jhen! Here comes the Crimson Jhen!
Or at least a monster that is similar. All the veterans would remember this one for sure, because all the randoms you played with got wrecked by it, simply swimming around in the ice. If Akantor returns, this one has to as well. I don't know why, but I always looked at them like brothers, fire and ice. Ukanlos was an annoying one, but for some reason I still miss him. Maybe it's because running away from him was exciting because you never knew if you were gonna get hit. I still loved to destroy his chin, as it was just very satisfying to see his pride and joy crumble. Jeez, I'm starting to sound like a cartoon villain. Number 4. Dalamadur. The sheer scale of this monster will be an absolute sight to behold. It already was back when we fought this guy on the 3DS, but it's been too long and it's about time he returns. If you don't understand why people use the Superman dive, you will surely understand after fighting this guy. If I'm not mistaken, this is still the longest monster to ever exist in the Monster Hunter universe. He had moves that some weapons could only avoid by performing the Superman dive. Sometimes you would die as he moved. Moved, I'm saying, not even attacked. Such a badass monster. If I would ever start a metal band, this guy would be on the cover of our first album and it wouldn't even look out of place. Such a gem. Make this happen, Capcom. I want to see this guy again. And the metal band. Number 3. Gogmazios. It's been too long since we've seen this monster return. This one's just so unique and definitely deserves to return, as there really is nothing like this one. Gogmazios has tar running down his body, slowing you down and damaging you. They might have to change his moves a little bit as his fight was very static. It would still be very interesting though. It's been so long, I barely even remember what he looked like. Do any of you know Gaijin Hunter? Well, if you do, apparently this is his favorite monster. That in and of itself should be enough to see this monster return. I would love to see what they could do with this one. Number 2. Amatsu. The only monster on this list where I think there's a reasonable chance that we might see the return. I actually think we might get this one in Rise as one of the final monsters that will be added to the game. However, I think they will change the fight completely, kinda like the way they did with Electron in Iceborne, which I didn't like, by the way. This monster, however, was really cool back in the day. It could control the weather. It created storms around the player, and when you defeated him, the weather turned and the sun started shining again. It was a very interesting fight as his attacks were pretty large and Amatsu himself was always floating above the ground. He also had these massive moves where he would create tornadoes all around, and he was pretty hard to avoid. Nonetheless, a very fun fight. And now, the number 1. Qurupeco. No, I'm not kidding you. Absolutely not. In fact, y'all don't know the fight that is Qurupeco. I think a lot of people that have never fought Qurupeco don't realize how big a deal this little bird was. See, the monster itself isn't that big a deal. His design was very unique, but the idea behind him was even more interesting. This bird could mimic monster screams, making random monsters appear. Not only was this very interesting and would change up the fight, it also added a factor of randomness as you never knew which monster he would spawn. It truly was a very fun mechanic. He would also shake his ass your way after he spawned a massive monster, just to mock you. This bird is one of the most underrated monsters. I don't even remember in which Monster Hunter he was last featured, but it's been at least 4 games ago. In other words, it's been too long. Bring back the Peco. And give him an event quest with different spawn rates, that would be amazing. As a bonus, I'll give you all a list of some honorable mentions that almost made my list, but for whatever reason, I decided to go with all the others. Number 1. Atalka, the spider-like monster. Very interesting, but he never really was my cup of tea. Number 2. Duramboros, or Duramboros. I think it would be interesting, especially since there's a lot more counters now. Number 3. Lao Shanglong. They would definitely have to change this one to make it more interesting, as half the fight was you just running around from place to place. And number 4. Seadus, or Seadus, or however you pronounce that in English, I have no clue. I don't see this one returning ever, pretty much, because this was an exclusive underwater fight. So as long as underwater combat won't return, this monster won't either. Also, I miss Glavenus, but at least that one was in World. Alright, so those were all the monsters that I would love to see return. With that said, I hope you've enjoyed. Like, subscribe, all that stuff, and I'll catch you guys later.